And we are live from an undisclosed location somewhere deep in the heart of American flyover country. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty. Uh, I'm the Christian Whistleblower. Welcome to the channel. I hope that you saw last night our great broadcast, The Last Stand, with myself and Jay Campbell. If you didn't have a chance to partake of that yet, make sure you do after this broadcast. I'm under the radar, but always over the top. Today is no exception. And we have a serious subject to talk about today. And you know that I don't often wax prophetic, I don't often make predictions, but when I do, they're right. And this is one of those times where I've been telling you for about a year and a half or 2 years to get ready because the Protestant scandals, a la the Roman Catholic scandals, are coming. And unfortunately, this is a case where I don't hate to say I love you, I told you so, and I don't hate to say I love you either. I don't hate to say I told you so. I usually love to say I told you so, but this is one of those times where I do hate to say I told you so. So I told you sex scandal, child abuse scandal was coming within the Protestant churches. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. The Roman Catholic Church has been known for it, and the Catholics and the Roman Protestants have been sitting on the sidelines saying, see, see, see. And now here it is. And it's being hidden for as long as 20 years. The largest Protestant denomination in the world, the Southern Baptist Convention, has a sexual abuse scandal that is spreading, and the leaders, just like their Roman Catholic mama, are resisting reforms within the Southern Baptist Convention. I've told you it's the same thing. I've told you it's the same religion. And I know a lot of you take me to task. Oh, we're not like the Catholics. We're Protestants. We're not like the Catholics at all. Well, do me a favor. Tell me how your abuse is different than their abuse. And do me this favor too. Make a list of all the things that the Roman Catholics and the Roman Protestants have in common, and put at the top of that list universal adherence to the doctrines of the Apostle Paul. Put at the second part of that list belief in the Old and New Testament as the Word of God. And then make a list of the things that aren't alike. And you tell me which list is longer, and weight it for importance, and you tell me which list is more important. But I'm not like him. He's black. He's got curly hair. He's thick. I'm lean. He's taller. I'm shorter. Well, I'm not like her. She's brown and black and gray, and I'm just black. Her hair's straight. I'm nothing like her. That's Barkley, the German Shepherd, and Merlin, the black golden doodle, saying they're nothing like each other. They're both dogs, and Roman Catholics and Roman Protestants are both dogs too. It's the same dog. It barks the same. It smells the same. And they lay down with the same dogs and they get up with the same fleas. It's the same religion with the same problems and the same bloodshed and the same shame. How long will you Protestants continue to support the same kind of abusers as in the Roman Catholic Church? You've been saying, oh, well, I would never go if my pastors were proven to be abusers. Well, I showed you yesterday. Over 6% of Protestant ministers have been shown to be abusers. Over 6%, ladies and gentlemen. That's about 1 in 11. On your way to work today, you drove past 20 Protestant churches, so you probably drove past 2 abusive pastors. How long will you continue to support it? Let's take a look at what I'm talking about today. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen. From the Houston Chronicle. using this article under fair use. The article is called Abuse of Faith. 20 years, 700 victims. 20 years, 700 victims. Southern Baptist sexual abuse spreads as the leaders resist reforms, by Robert Downen, Lisa Olson, and John Tedesco. Multimedia by John Shapley. And again, this is from the Houston Chronicle. 35 years, some of this in the making, ladies and gentlemen. 47,000 churches within the Southern Baptist Convention, people asking them to track sexual predators. And what have they been doing? They've been harboring, they've been concealing abusers. This is a lady that was abused, picture of herself as a girl when she was abused. There's a reason why it's called the missionary position, ladies and gentlemen. And the Southern Baptist leaders have consistently rejected nearly every proposed reform. The abusers haven't stopped, and they've hurt hundreds and hundreds more. Just like the Roman Catholic priests before them, the Southern Baptist preachers, and Billy Graham was a Southern Baptist preacher. And I'm telling you here again today, by word of prophecy, wait till you hear the things that Billy Graham was involved in. You won't hear that here today, but you just wait. 250 people since the Roman Protestant Southern Baptists refused reforms at the behest of this lady named Vasquez, who was abused. She didn't give up. She kept pushing. And since then, more than 250 people who worked or volunteered in Southern Baptist churches have been charged with sex crimes. An investigation by the Houston Chronicle and the San Antonio Express News reveals. And since 1998, another 380 Southern Baptist church leaders and volunteers have faced allegations of sexual misconduct, including those convicted, credibly accused, successfully sued, and those who confessed or resigned. More of them worked in the state of Texas than any other U.S. state. They left behind over 700 victims, shunned by churches, some urged to forgive abusers or get abortions. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. The Southern Baptist Church coercing victims of sexual abuse to undergo abortions. 100 of them are still in prison, stretching from Sacramento, California to Hillsborough County, Florida. And they're building a database of former leaders in Southern Baptist churches who've been convicted of sex crimes. Don't tell me that there's not a one-size-fits-all fix, you Jesuit whitewashed fence priest who wants to say that ahead of the Pope's so-called summit, abuse summit. See my video on yesterday. At least 35 pastors who exhibited predatory behavior were still able to find jobs at churches over the past 2 decades. Church leaders fail to alert law enforcement about complaints or to warn other congregations about allegations of misconduct. Several past presidents and prominent leaders of the Southern Baptist Convention are among those criticized by victims for concealing or mishandling abuse complaints within their own churches or seminaries, just like the Roman Catholic Church. Registered sex offenders return to the pulpit. Let me say that again. Some registered sex offenders have returned to the pulpit. Others have remained there, including a Houston preacher who sexually assaulted a teenager and is now the principal officer of a Houston nonprofit that works with student organizations. And the name of that organization, touching the future today. Some things you just can't make up. Like a child abuse expert being a Roman Catholic Jesuit priest. If you're such an expert, Father, then why are over 11% of your priests still abusing children? Many of the victims were adolescents, molested, sent explicit photos or text, exposed to pornography, photographed nude, or repeatedly raped by pastors, some as young as 3 years old. Inside pastor studies, Sunday school classrooms, and including women and men, adults who sought pastoral guidance and were seduced or sexually abused. Some as young as 14 years old, some as young as 3 years old. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not just a Catholic problem anymore. It's not just a Roman Catholic problem anymore. It has become, unfortunately, as I predicted, a Roman Protestant problem as well. If you look here, there's a list of individuals at the top of the Southern Baptist Convention who have been involved in the cover-ups, who've been involved in allegations and returned to their pulpits. I'll leave that up there so you can look at some of the faces and read some of the names. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me no pleasure to bring you this information. It gives me no pleasure to bring you this type of information. Over 220 Southern Baptist church officials who were convicted or pleaded guilty. There's a database that you can actually search. Look at this. Search our database of 220 Southern Baptist church officials. Whoops, let me share it. Southern Baptist church officials who were convicted or pleaded guilty. There's a database you can actually search. And there it is. And here's some of the great men of God within the Southern Baptist Convention who are convicted sexual predators. Look at these great men of God. None of them wearing a Catholic frock. Where are all my Protestants now? I think you get my point. I'm called the Christian Whistleblower not just because I get on Bible Hub and point out the doctrinal errors. It also is my job to go here and point out the real world abuses and hypocrisies that all their eyes are the same, says T-Boom TV. Very interesting. And I'm not talking about people that do things that don't line up with Roman Catholic or Roman Protestant sexual mores. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with, some of these people have had homosexual relationships. I'm not saying that there's anything definitely explicitly wrong with homosexual relationships. I'm saying there's something wrong with preaching that they're send you to hell and still doing them. We're talking about a pattern of hypocrisy. We're talking about a pattern of abuse. We're talking about a pattern of victimizing people. That's the problem, ladies and gentlemen. That's the problem. Cindy B tells a story of a sex offender interview who stated that he handpicked Christian children because they are nice. Then it was easy to victimize them. Let me run through the chat room and give you some of the input that we get from some of these great people. Until your channel, I accepted the fact that I was going to hell because of past sins. I've forgiven myself since, asked forgiveness of others, and in a profession of not so nice people, I still treat others with dignity and respect, even when it is hard. Cindy knows of an incident where a young man visited a Southern Baptist church, went home following, and hung himself because the pastor scared him so badly. It's the fear and guilt control matrix, ladies and gentlemen. And the Christian Whistleblower is here to do everything I can and we can to destroy that fear and guilt control matrix. What else do we have here? All denominations today are based on the Roman Catholic King James Version of the Bible. So how could any of them differentiate themselves from Catholics of any kind? Very well said, Lena Johnson. How can we take these organizations down? By doing what we're doing. I don't understand why people are doing this to kids. Is it control? Do they get high from doing this? Well, we have talked a lot, especially on the last stand, about adrenochrome. We've talked about the power of the blood. We've talked about the fear. We've talked about the guilt. We've talked about the control. And, you know, there's power. If you think that this guy stands between you and heaven, and he can put in a good word for you, or if he puts in a bad word for you, he can make you go to hell. It'll make you do a lot of things. Loquita asked the big question of all of you Roman Catholics and all of you Roman Protestants. How long will you continue to be blind? Jerry says it's a power trip. Dusha says the truth is coming out. A 70-year-old mother completely agrees with me. I take that as a very powerful endorsement. Lena says on the Gulf Coast in the Deep South, the amount of churches is insane. She goes grocery shopping on Sunday because everyone else is at church. And just think of it. Over 1 in 10 of the Catholic preachers, 1 in 11 or 12 of the Protestants are committing some form of sexual victimization of people within their spiritual care. Billy Goat Graham. I agree. All the priests who are abused in Chicago, it's everywhere. Victims are not believed when they come forward. A lot of people say Billy Graham has died twice. I've heard that. They're in our face with the wording. Most pastors, says Jason Rios, he felt were far too touchy. Power Vapor Supply says when you start researching this, you'll find nuns that were raped by priests and forced to have abortions. I'm actually talking right now with a former nun who is going to come on the program, and she was a victim of ritualistic abuse by the priests within a convent, monastery / seminary, and she'll be coming on to talk about this. And again, I want you to know that this is not just, that really is the name, Touching the Future. Blatant, flagrant, in our face. I remember watching Jim Baker and that idiot that he was with, I can't remember his name, after they had spent the afternoon sexually abusing Jessica Hahn, laughing and joking amongst themselves on camera about what a great afternoon of body ministry that they had. That's the kind of people that we're talking about. It is a damn crying shame. And it is everywhere. Mark Center Saint makes a good point. Why does it happen so much? Because child and sex abuse is a religious practice for them. It is part of their sacraments. It's at the deepest core of Abrahamic religion. That's why one of the reasons I'm not there anymore. Exposing these beasts doesn't stop them. So what's the answer? Says Kay Downey. Well, I think exposing them certainly doesn't help them. And I'd rather be part of the solution than part of the problem. When you're a child abuser, your religion is the lowest darkness possible you can reach as a being. Silver-tongued pedos. Freddy Krueger's fictional mother was Sister Mary Helena. She was a nun who was raped. Lots of subtle Gnostic overtones in the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Very well stated. Jason Rios puts in Jimmy Swaggart. Well, let me say this about Jimmy Swaggart. Jimmy, to my knowledge, never victimized any women. I don't know if you can call prostitution victimized. There's a lot of psychology and sociology that goes into that, but Swaggart never messed with children. Swaggart never used his power and authority to seduce anyone within his congregation. So I don't know if Swaggart would fit underneath this blanket or not. So we have to be fair and we have to be objective. Swaggart was great with money. One of the great pure preachers. Had a little problem with prostitutes, but I don't know if that, and this is actually a good example. I don't have a problem with Jimmy Swaggart expressing non-conforming sexuality if Jimmy Swaggart's not in the pulpit condemning everybody else for doing the same things he's doing, which he was. The point here is not sexuality that's outside of the missionary position. Well, there it is again, the missionary position. Why do they call it that? That's not the issue, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not advocating non-traditional sexual activity, but I'm not condemning people for non-traditional sexual activity. What I'm condemning people for is victimizing people, using their power to victimize people under their spiritual leadership, or engaging in activities that they publicly condemn. That's what we're talking about here. A man tried to tell Barry that he got in trouble with it and an 8-year-old wanted it. Come on. A lot of the same thing within the Jehovah's Witness organization as well. The Jim and Tammy Heritage USA bizarre resort, sex parties, swapping. I know more about that than I want to say. Again, Catherine says the witnesses, it is business as usual. Paid sex is different from prey sex. I would tend to agree with that. Alana says suffering from trauma continually is a personal choice. That gets into a dicey area. I understand what she's saying. Some people do want to wrap themselves in victimhood, but I think it'd be a lot easier if they weren't told that it was their fault, if it didn't come through a religious context. And yes, talk about your trauma, confront your accusers, don't blame yourself, and don't continue to be a victim. And I can agree with that. It is hypocrisy. Jerry, I'm going to take that out because I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sure you don't mean what I think you mean. If they weren't behind the pulpit, they'd be in prison. I'm sure that's true. T-Boom TV says it's a bastardization of the sacred sexual. T-Boom TV, you have stumbled upon, and I don't think you've actually stumbled upon it. You've brought up one of the key reasons for this. And I think you're right, and we'll be delving into this more this year. The sacred sexual and the perversion of the sacred sexual. And that's exactly what's going on. There's the sacred sexual and there's the non-sacred sexual. And Abrahamic religion is all about the latter. Latter. Child sexual abuse, says Mark Centersane, is a tactic for mind control. 9 out of 10 abusers were abused themselves. The cycle continues. It is psyche shattering, says Mark, and I agree. This isn't really a place for lighthearted commentary. No joke, I got to see some very strange and inappropriate things at PTL. Me too, JH. It involves soul fragmentation. Religion takes the spirit out of children. It does. and it puts a lot of things into them that shouldn't be there. All puns, all implications fully intended in that statement. So the days where the Protestants can sit back and say, see, it's the Catholics, are over. And folks, as much as I hate to say it, this is just getting started. It's just getting started. And if I have anything to do about it, if you have anything to do about it, if we have anything to do about it, we will continue to see more and more of this information outed. We'll continue to see more and more of these predatory individuals identified. We will continue to shine light into the dark corners of orthodoxy, and we will continue to expose these cockroaches to the light of day. And we will continue to do everything that we can to, of course, metaphorically stomp them like the insects that they are. Southern Baptist Convention. Convicted of sexual impropriety, sexual molestation, using their power to sexually coerce and abuse people under their spiritual care. Not a Roman collar amongst them, not a Eucharist in the building, and not just men. Ladies and gentlemen, your hall of shame from the Southern Baptists, your hall of shame from the Roman Protestants, just like from the Roman Catholics. Abrahamic faith is a poisoned well. And ladies and gentlemen, this is the real swamp. And we're here to drain it. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower. And we're just getting started.